I wasn't even supposed to be in Austin that weekend. The original plan was simple. Julia would fly out Thursday morning with her team for the quarterly corporate summit, and I'd stay back in Dallas, finish a few consulting contracts, maybe squeeze in a weekend hike with my younger brother. She said the summit was strictly work. Speeches, seminars, late-night meetings with international partners. Boring stuff. But on Wednesday night, she called me from the hotel and said, "You should come down for the company party on Saturday. It might be nice to show face." I didn't even think twice. Now I wonder if she only invited me to make herself feel better. I drove the 3 hours down I-35 that afternoon, windows cracked, Austin skyline pulling into view just after 5. I checked into a separate hotel, figuring I'd meet up with Julia after the event. She never gave me details on her accommodations, which felt odd at the time but didn't register as anything serious. Back then, I still trusted her without reservation. The party was hosted in a swanky hotel downtown, the kind of place with sleek marble floors, dim lighting, and jazz humming beneath the sound of overpriced cocktails being stirred. I showed up half an hour early. I didn't tell her I was coming early. I thought it'd be a nice surprise. The first thing I noticed was how she looked different. I'd seen Julia dressed up plenty of times before, but this was curated, intentional. She wore this deep emerald green dress, satin probably, low-backed and form-fitting. A dress I'd never seen once in our closet. Her hair was up, not in the practical ponytail she usually defaulted to, but swept into some soft, elegant twist. She looked stunning objectively, but it wasn't for me. I knew that before she even saw me. She was standing near the bar with Travis. I'd heard his name more in the past 2 months than anyone else's from her team. Travis asked if I could take a look at his pitch deck. Travis says I'm the only one who can run the client demo. Travis is harmless. I never thought much of it. I mean, I'm not the jealous type. But now, seeing them standing so close, fingers entwined like teenagers at a school dance, I felt the floor shift under me. I stood there for a moment before they noticed. Long enough to watch her adjust the hem of her dress. Long enough to see him lean in and say something that made her laugh. Not polite laughter either. The kind she used to give me back when we were new. That's when she saw me. It was like a switch flipped. Her smile faltered, and she instinctively dropped his hand, like a kid caught sneaking candy. She took 2 quick steps toward me, leaving Travis awkwardly behind at the bar. "Hey," she said brightly, voice raised like she could somehow overwrite the moment I just witnessed. "You made it early, that's a surprise." I didn't say anything, just looked at her. She smelled like something expensive, floral, not her usual citrusy scent. There was a lipstick smudge on the rim of the glass behind her, not the one she was holding now. A second drink. She followed my gaze and said, too quickly, "Oh, Travis and I were just catching up on project stuff. He's just a colleague, it means nothing." That line changed everything. Not what she said, but how she said it. The defensive, performative way she straightened her spine, glanced back at Travis and then back at me. The way her voice pitched up on colleague, like she was trying to convince herself more than me. She said it like it was a shield, like those 5 words could erase what I'd seen. But her hand had lingered on his. Her body was angled toward him, and he hadn't looked surprised when she dropped his hand, just disappointed. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions or accuse her of anything. I just nodded once, turned around, and walked out the way I came in. 5 seconds. That's how long it took me to make the decision. 5 seconds between the moment she said, "It means nothing," and the moment I stepped out into the Texas evening heat. 5 seconds to end 6 years of partnership, 3 years of marriage, and over a decade of history. She didn't follow me. I stood just outside the hotel doors, the hum of downtown traffic pushing against me like static. I could hear a saxophone from a busker across the street. I remember thinking, bizarrely, that it was a nice night, breezy, warm, the kind of night we would have walked through hand in hand after splitting dessert somewhere. The kind of night we used to make memories in. But now, I was making a different kind of memory, the one where I realized I didn't know who my wife was anymore. It wasn't just about the hand-holding. It was everything around it. The secrecy, the new dress, the second drink, the look on her face when she saw me. She wasn't afraid I was hurt. She was afraid I saw. I walked 2 blocks in a daze before I realized I'd left my car in the valet. Didn't matter. I kept walking, past the food trucks, past the couples laughing outside bars, past a man selling roses on a street corner. 1 block at a time, I felt the version of my life I'd believed in start to unravel. I checked my phone. No text. No missed call. Nothing from Julia. Not even a "where did you go?" I sat on a bench at 6th and Congress and watched the sky turn pink. All I could hear in my head was that one line. He's just a colleague, it means nothing. Funny how people say things that are supposed to fix a situation but only make it worse. Because the moment she said that, I realized she'd already been rehearsing it. She wasn't reacting. She was reciting. That line wasn't spontaneous. It was ready. And if she had that line ready, it meant she knew what it looked like. She knew how close she'd been walking to the edge. She just didn't expect me to see it. Well, I saw it. I sat there until the light changed. Then I finally stood up, called a cab, and told the driver to take me back to my hotel. I didn't want to go back to the party or the past or anything that reminded me of the version of Julia I thought I knew. Back at the hotel, I turned off my phone, pulled the curtains, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. I felt numb, like someone had turned the volume down on the world. Could have screamed. I could have marched back and made a scene. But what was the point? The damage wasn't just in what I saw, it was in everything I hadn't seen before now. The question wasn't if she was lying. The question was how long she had been getting ready to. I replayed it again. The dress, the drinks, the way she dropped his hand too late. And that line, polished, practiced, hollow. He's just a colleague, it means nothing. But it did mean something. It meant I was done. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, arms crossed behind my head, my body motionless like my brain didn't trust it to move. Even blinking felt like a decision. The room was dark, but inside my head, a spotlight was turning on memory after memory. Small, ordinary moments, all suddenly drenched in suspicion. And it all started to make sense. At the time, I hadn't wanted to believe anything was wrong. That's the dangerous part of loving someone. You start mistaking discomfort for coincidence. You call suspicion insecurity. You give benefit after benefit of the doubt, until your gut is hoarse from screaming at you. But now that the spell was broken, the truth came rushing in like floodwater. First, the phone thing. For the past 6 months, maybe more, Julia had this habit of leaving her phone face down. Always. At restaurants, at home, even at night by the bed. She said it was to reduce screen time. But if that were true, why was she still on it constantly? And why did she flinch the one time I picked it up to check the weather? It was a Wednesday night. I remember it exactly. Her phone buzzed, screen lit up, and I reached across the coffee table without thinking. We were watching a movie. She was in the kitchen getting popcorn. I just tapped the screen to check the notification, assuming it was a calendar reminder or something from Amazon. She came around the corner and saw me holding it. Instant shift. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice tight. Not shocked, accusatory. Like I was the one caught doing something wrong. "I was just checking the time," I said, confused. "You have your own phone," she snapped, snatching hers back. Then she laughed like she was joking, like she wasn't serious. "Sorry, just work stuff. It's been chaotic." I let it go. I remember that. I sat back down, watched the rest of the movie, and ignored the knot in my stomach. That knot? Yeah. That was the truth trying to get my attention. And then there were the late meetings. Julia had always been a hard worker. That was one of the first things I admired about her when we met. She had hustle, ambition. She could run circles around half the people in her office and still make it to dinner with me by 7:30. But then, out of nowhere, meetings started running late. First once a week, then twice, then almost every night. At first, I didn't question it. Her company was expanding. New clients, more presentations. But slowly, the patterns shifted. She'd come home looking more polished. not stressed like someone who just dragged herself through back-to-back budget calls. Her lipstick still fresh. The faint smell of wine on her breath. Not office wine, either. Date wine. Full-bodied and floral. I remember the night I cooked dinner for her after she said she had a long one. Lemon chicken with rosemary. She texted me at 6:45. So sorry. Babe. Meeting just got extended, eat without me. At 9:30, she walked in. No laptop. No stress. She kissed my cheek and complimented the smell. But she didn't touch the food. Said she'd already eaten. At the time, I assumed she meant takeout at her desk. Now, I picture her across a small candlelit table, laughing at a joke that wasn't mine. Then there were the expenses. We shared a bank account. Not completely, we each had separate ones too. But the joint card was the one we used for shared things. Groceries, bills, random takeout nights. One night about 2 months ago, I logged in to check something and saw 2 charges that didn't make sense. One was for a wine bar, a place we'd been to once. It was a boutique spot downtown with vintage posters on the walls and no menu prices. The other was a boutique hotel we'd never stayed in, just a small charge, maybe for drinks at the bar or valet. When I asked her, she was casual. "Oh, that?" she said, not even looking up from her laptop. "Client thing. Travis was with me, we were showing a partner from out of town around. Got the company to reimburse it later." Travis. God, if I could go back in time and really listen to how often that name came up, I'd probably start counting red flags like raindrops in a storm. She used to roll her eyes at him. "He's harmless," she'd say. Sweet, but awkward. Then slowly the tone changed. She started complimenting his work ethic. Then his creativity. Then his ideas. And then he was showing up in her stories more than anyone else. Funny how people's names get louder when they start matching more. I thought about the trip she took last month, the supposed leadership summit in Atlanta. She was gone for 4 days, came back with barely any stories. Usually she'd tell me about the panels or the weird food someone ordered, or how the hotel coffee was garbage. This time, nothing. Just said it was a blur. Now I know why. I opened our shared calendar on my laptop, scrolling back. There it was. Atlanta Summit, Thursday to Sunday. I cross-checked it with her email. The summit had ended Saturday morning. She flew back Sunday night. What happened in those missing 36 hours? I didn't need exact answers. I already knew. Not with proof, but with certainty. That quiet kind that hits you in the chest, not the brain. Because now everything made sense. Her pulling away during small moments. Her sudden interest in solo nights. The tension in her jaw when I asked about future plans. The way she reacted whenever I brought up visiting my family, especially when she found reasons not to come. Before it was next time, or work's crazy, or I don't like road trips. But now I understood. She didn't want to go because she didn't see us in the long term anymore. I was still playing the role of husband. She was already preparing an exit strategy. I sat up in bed, dizzy with it all. The weight of it, how long it had been growing in the background while I was busy making dinner, planning anniversaries, believing in us. The foundation had been cracking, and I hadn't even seen the dust. Or maybe I did. Maybe I saw all of it and just refused to believe she'd do that to me. Refused to believe that the same woman who cried during our wedding vows could look me in the eyes and lie straight through her teeth. Refused to believe she was already halfway out the door while I was still holding it open. I looked over at my phone. No missed calls. No texts from Julia. Not a single message asking where I'd gone last night. Not even a fake apology. She was probably with him. Maybe trying to spin the story. Maybe laughing about how I'd overreacted. Or maybe, and this is the part that crushed me, maybe she didn't even care that I'd walked away. Because when someone's already gone in their heart, your exit just makes things easier. I stood up, grabbed the throw blanket off the couch and sat at the table. Just sat there, in the silence. My reflection stared back at me from the window. I didn't recognize the guy looking back. And maybe that was the most painful realization of all. I hadn't lost Julia last night. I'd already lost her months ago. The morning after the party, or whatever that night had become. I woke to a buzzing phone on the nightstand. For a split second, a tiny, traitorous part of me hoped it was her. That Julia had realized what I saw, what it meant, and had finally decided to tell the truth. But when I blinked the bleariness from my eyes and grabbed the phone, it wasn't her name on the screen. It was my younger brother, Alex. Alex is 5 years younger than me and way more in tune with the modern world. Freelance photographer, digital marketing guy, social savvy as hell. Ironically, it was Julia who introduced him to a recruiter at her company a year ago. That connection got him occasional contracts doing internal event photography for corporate retreats and parties. Like the one last night, my stomach sank. I opened the message. Alex, 8:03 a.m. Hey, I didn't know if I should send this, but I figured you'd want to see it. I didn't realize it was Julia at first. I was going through event footage and found this from before the program started. I'm really sorry, man. There was a video attachment. I tapped it with a trembling thumb. The screen filled with a wide-angle hallway *T behind the ballroom stage. You could see 2 figures in the corner, lit just barely by the spillover light from the main room. I recognized the silhouette immediately, Julia. Same dress, same pinned-up hair, same woman I'd seen hours earlier pretending nothing was going on. The man beside her? Travis. In the video, they weren't just standing close. They were touching. She had one hand on his chest, fixing the collar of his button-up shirt with this casual *Macy, like she'd done it 100 times. He was smiling, not nervous or awkward, but confident, comfortable. And then, before I could even brace for it, she leaned in and kissed him. Not a peck, not a polite European goodbye. A real kiss, lips parted. No hesitation. They pulled apart, both laughing. She said something I couldn't hear. The audio was fuzzy. Then they turned and walked off together out of frame, like it was the most natural thing in the world. 17 seconds. That's how long the video lasted. That's how long it took to vaporize the last microscopic sliver of doubt I had left. I replayed it twice. Not because I didn't believe it the first time, but because I needed to make myself feel it. Needed to accept that it wasn't a nightmare or paranoia or a misunderstanding. This was it. The mask had dropped. The story she'd been telling me. All the late nights, the gaslighting, the half-truths had officially collapsed. And now, the facts lived on my phone. For a few minutes, I just stared at the screen. The replay button glowed. I didn't touch it again. I felt nothing. No tears. No rage. No cinematic explosion of pain. Just stillness, like something inside had shut off. Then I stood up, grabbed my laptop, and started making moves. I'm not a dramatic guy. I don't throw dishes. I don't yell. But I do know how to plan. My background's in consulting, logistics, operations, crisis recovery. I've spent years building systems for companies so they can respond to chaos without falling apart. And now I was the company, and Julia was the crisis. Step 1. Save the video. I downloaded it from Alex's message and backed it up twice. Once to an encrypted folder on my laptop, and again to a private cloud drive. I sent it to myself via email with a timestamp subject line and CC'd my personal account. I wasn't going to let this evidence disappear because of a glitch or an accidental deletion. Step 2. Call a lawyer. I didn't even hesitate. Her name was Sarah Campos. Top-tier family law specialist recommended to me years ago by a client who'd gone through a brutal divorce. At the time, I took the name as a just-in-case formality. Now it felt like fate. I left a voicemail first. Then I followed up with a text. Hi, Sarah. My name's Mark R. You were recommended to me by Carl D. I'd like to consult ASAP regarding a divorce. I have video evidence of infidelity. Please let me know when you're available. She called me back less than an hour later. Her voice was calm, surgical, exactly what I needed. First, I'm sorry you're going through this, she said after I gave her the gist. Second, we're gonna move fast. This is a high-advantage position for you. Do you have access to your shared accounts? Yes. And any assets you brought into the marriage? My business. The house. 2 investment accounts. Any of them in both names? The house, technically. We refinanced 2 years ago and added her. Okay, she said, already typing. judging by the clicks I heard on her end. Then let's get to work. We scheduled an in-person meeting that afternoon. I drove straight there, didn't even stop for lunch. She greeted me with a stack of folders and a legal pad. I handed her my laptop and played the video. She didn't blink. "That's clear," she said. "You can file on grounds of infidelity in Texas, though courts lean no fault unless there's substantial financial implication. But don't worry, that's what we're going to build." She started listing things. Gather all documentation of expenses. Freeze or limit access to joint credit. Transfer individual assets to a pre-existing trust or legal shelter. Catalog evidence of betrayal that had financial consequences. Commingling, unauthorized use of funds, etc. I nodded, took notes. For the first time in hours, I felt like I had a compass. Because up until that moment, all I had was a shattered heart. Now I had a direction. By the time I got back to the hotel that evening, the gears were already turning. Sarah had sent over a checklist and a secure folder for uploads. I called my bank to put a temporary freeze on our shared credit line. I'd scheduled a meeting with my CPA to discuss the safest way to shelter my business assets without triggering flags. Julia still hadn't called. Not once. And I wasn't going to be the one to break the silence. It was almost funny, in a dark way. In the span of 24 hours, she had gone from someone I made coffee for every morning to someone whose name felt foreign in my mouth. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't just change how you feel, it rewrites the past. Corrupts the memories. It stains them retroactively. I remembered our last vacation. A beach trip 6 months ago. At the time, I thought it was beautiful, quiet, romantic. Now I wondered how many of those work check-ins she took from the balcony were really conversations with Travis. I opened her Instagram, scrolled back. A picture from that trip. Her in a sun hat, cocktail in hand, captioned bliss. I wanted to throw the phone. Instead, I took a **T. I'd learned something important from Sarah. Every post, every lie, every manipulation that could reflect intention mattered. Especially if the affair involved finances, misuse of joint assets, or even reputation damage to my business. "Documentation is power," she said, and I was building a portfolio. That night, Alex called again. "Hey," he said hesitantly, "I just want you to know. I had no idea. When I took the job, I didn't even know Julia worked there. I wasn't trying to dig up drama." "I know," I said, and I meant it. "Still," he said, "if there's anything else I can do, I've got raw footage, stills, timestamps, everything." My brother, 26, emotionally reckless, but fiercely loyal. "Send it all," I said. "Let's turn this into a file." He paused. "You good?" I didn't answer right away, but then I said, "No, but I will be." That night I took one last look at the video. 17 seconds. A kiss, a laugh, a departure, and just before she walks off screen, she touches Travis's hand again. A small gesture. Familiar, like this wasn't new. I hit pause and stared at the frame. That was the moment my marriage ended. Not when I saw them at the bar. Not when she gave me that throwaway excuse. It ended here in the proof. And the next morning, I'd begin the defense of everything I'd built. The moment I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like a man protecting his life, everything changed. I didn't give myself time to mourn. Grief could come later, after the locks were changed, after the assets were safe, after the future I'd spent years building was no longer vulnerable to someone who had already proven she couldn't be trusted. Sarah was clear about one thing when we met again that morning. Hesitation was the enemy. "Emotion slows people down," she said, sliding a legal pad across the table. "And the person who moves first usually controls the narrative." So I moved. Within 48 hours, my life became a series of deliberate actions. I opened a trust under my name, something I'd been advised to do years ago but never felt the urgency for. The suburban house, my consulting office, and my long-term investment account were transferred into it cleanly and legally. No tricks, no gray areas. Just foresight catching up to reality. Julia still technically lived with me, But from a financial standpoint, the door was already closing. I froze every joint credit card. Not canceled, frozen. There's a difference. Canceling sends a message. Freezing sends silence. She wouldn't know until it didn't work. Sarah explained it was better that way. Less confrontation. Less chance for damage. Then came the business records. I'd given Julia $35,000 over the past year to help her start what she called her creative consulting brand. At the time, it felt like support, like partnership. She had PowerPoint decks, mood boards, a logo she'd paid a freelancer to design. She talked about independence, about wanting something that was hers. What she didn't have was a contract, or a repayment plan, or any traceable revenue. Just my money moved in chunks justified with trust. Sarah raised an eyebrow when I showed her the bank statements. "This is recoverable," she said, "especially if we can show misrepresentation." And we could. I went through months of transactions line by line. Hotels, ride shares, restaurants that matched dates she claimed to be working late. The pattern was unmistakable once you stopped looking at each charge in isolation. This wasn't bad budgeting. It was funding a double life. By the third night, my dining table was covered in printed statements, highlighted timestamps, and handwritten notes. I slept 4 hours at a time, fueled by coffee and something sharper than anger, clarity. Julia started texting. First, it was confusion. "Where did you go? Why aren't you answering? Can we talk?" Then concern. "I'm worried. This isn't like you. Please come home." And finally, accusation. "You're overreacting. This is unfair. You don't get to just disappear." I didn't reply to a single one. Sarah told me not to. "Every word is ammunition," she said. "Let her talk. Silence is not cruelty, it's containment." I moved into a short-term apartment near my office. Neutral ground. Clean space. Somewhere Julia had no emotional or legal foothold. I brought only what I needed. Clothes, laptop, documents. The rest could wait. What surprised me wasn't how quickly I adapted. It was how calm I felt doing it. There's a strange peace that comes when your worst fear becomes a fact. No more wondering. No more guessing. Just decisions. By day 3, Julia finally called from a different number. I answered by accident, muscle memory. "Mark," she said immediately, her voice tight. "What is going on?" I paused. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to hear how she framed it. "You left," she continued. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain." "I saw the video," I said. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. "What video?" "The one where you kissed Travis behind the stage," I replied. Calm. Flat. 17 seconds long. The pause stretched longer this time. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted, softer, measured, almost rehearsed. "It wasn't what it looked like." I almost laughed. "I'm filing," I said. "My lawyer will be in touch." Her voice cracked. "You can't do this. We built a life together." "Yes," I said. "I did." And I hung up. That was the last direct conversation we had. From that moment on, everything went through attorneys. Controlled. Documented. Clean. Sarah moved fast. She filed the initial paperwork, attached the video evidence, and began compiling the financial narrative. Not just infidelity, but misuse of marital funds, concealment, and intent. Intent matters. Julia's access to money dried up within days. Her credit cards declined. Her business account went negative. And suddenly, the person who'd felt comfortable lying to my face was forced to deal with consequences she couldn't talk her way out of. She left voicemail after voicemail. I didn't listen to them. I archived them. Time-stamped. Stored. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about defense. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was making sure she couldn't hurt me anymore. Late one night, alone in the apartment, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked older, sharper, like someone who'd been forced to grow up fast. I realized something then, something uncomfortable, but true. If I hadn't walked out of that party when I did, I might still be negotiating my own boundaries, still explaining away lies, still funding someone else's escape. Walking away hadn't been emotional. It had been instinctual. And now everything I built, my work, my future, my sense of self was finally protected. The war wasn't loud, but it had big asterisk N. It was late afternoon when Sarah, my lawyer, not Julia's daughter, called and said, "We've got another development." I was sitting in the apartment kitchen, eating cereal straight from the box and staring at the spreadsheet I'd built to track financial activity from our joint account. My mind had grown used to numbers lately, rows of transactions, timelines, paper trails. They made more sense than feelings did. I grabbed a pen. "What's up?" "It's about Julia's daughter," she said. "Sarah." That made me sit up straight. Julia's daughter, 13, quiet, observant, had been part of my life for nearly 5 years. Her father wasn't in the picture, and Julia rarely talked about him. I'd never tried to replace him, but Sarah and I had our rhythm. We had inside jokes, a shared love of obscure sci-fi movies, and an unspoken understanding that I saw her. "She reached out," Sarah continued, "said she needed to talk. Didn't know who else to call." "Did she say why?" "She asked if she could talk to you directly. She insisted." There was a beat of silence. Then Sarah added gently, "She sounded scared." I met Sarah, the daughter, the next day at a park near the school she used to attend. She sat on a bench, hood up, earbuds dangling around her neck, twisting the drawstring of her hoodie between her fingers. She looked smaller than I remembered. "Hey, kid," I said, careful not to smile too wide. I didn't know how this was going to go. She looked up, eyes tired but steady. "Hey." We sat in silence for a minute. A family passed behind us. A kid screamed at a squirrel. Someone's dog barked. It all felt too normal. Then she said, "I know something. About Mom." I waited. "There's a man," she continued, eyes on her hands. "His name's Mike. I don't know his last name." "Okay," I said gently. "How do you know Mike?" "He's been coming to the house since before you left." She looked at me then, direct and sure. "Not just once or twice. A lot." I felt my stomach tighten. I hadn't expected that. "Did your mom tell you who he was?" "She said he was helping with her business," Sarah said. "But he stayed late, sometimes overnight. One time I went downstairs to get water and I saw them on the couch. They were, like, close. I didn't ask for details. I pretended I didn't see anything," she said. "But I started listening." "To what?" "Phone calls. Conversations. I know it's bad, but I had to know what was happening." I nodded. "It's not bad. Go on." She hesitated, like she wasn't sure how much to say. Then she looked at me again. "One afternoon, I heard him tell her, 'Once the lake property is sold, we're out.' And she said, 'We're close.'" Time stopped. The lake property. It was mine. I'd inherited that land from my uncle, a remote, wooded stretch of property up near Lake Whitney. It wasn't developed, just trees and potential. But the land had been valued at nearly $500,000 during the last appraisal. I never put Julia's name on the deed. Not because I didn't trust her. Back then, I just hadn't gotten around to it. But apparently, she hadn't waited for permission. "She showed him pictures of it," Sarah added, "on her laptop. Said it'd be perfect once they cleared the paperwork." I rubbed my face with both hands, trying to stay calm. "Sarah, thank you for telling me this. I know that wasn't easy." "I didn't do it for her," she said quietly. "You always told me the truth, even when it's asterisk kid." That hit me harder than I expected. "I didn't know who else to tell," she added, looking down again. "I don't want to go back there." "You won't have to," I said immediately, and I meant it. I called Sarah, the lawyer, that night, told her everything. She didn't sound surprised. "I had a feeling," she said. "The financial moves we've seen, the withdrawals, the fake business expenses, it was building toward something. But trying to sell property that's not in her name, that's a whole different ballgame." "Is it criminal?" I asked. "It's fraud if we can prove intent. And thanks to Sarah, we have motive, conversations, and a third party. I'll start filing immediately." She tried to sell the future I was saving, I said, mostly to myself. She tried to sell your future, Sarah corrected. Without your consent. And now we go on offense. The next few days were chaos behind the scenes. Sarah's team obtained records showing that Julia had already met with 2 potential buyers. One had even submitted a preliminary offer. Not through my agent, of course, but through someone Julia had contacted independently. She'd forged paperwork to make it seem like she had the authority to negotiate. When they sent over a scanned copy, my signature was clearly fake. That was the tipping point. Fraud, forgery, property misrepresentation. The plan wasn't just emotional anymore, it was financial theft. And with that, our case transformed from a bitter divorce into a legal escalation. We filed a formal injunction to prevent any sale of the lake property and reported the incident to the district attorney. Sarah also filed for an emergency financial restraining order, effectively freezing Julia's access to any remaining shared funds, including the small business account she'd been using to siphon money. The locks on the house were changed the same day. Her key wouldn't work now, even if she tried. I picked Sarah, the daughter, up from school and brought her back to the apartment. She didn't ask questions. She just dropped her backpack on the floor and sat on the couch like she already knew she wouldn't be going back. I didn't pack anything, she said quietly. We'll get it later, I said. She nodded. We watched a movie that night. Something ridiculous and loud, involving aliens and explosions and terrible one-liners. She laughed once. Just once. But I held on to that sound like it was gold. Because through all this wreckage, there was still something worth protecting. Julia found out everything within 48 hours. The filing, the freeze, the statement of fraud, the daughter she'd left behind without even realizing it. She didn't take it well. The texts came in fast. Walls of them. **TS filled with, "How dare you? This is illegal. You'll regret this. I didn't do anything wrong. She's my daughter." And finally, "You're turning her against me." I didn't respond. I let Sarah, lawyer, handle all communications. By now, we'd established the timeline. I had proof of her relationship with Travis, evidence of her ongoing affair with Mike, testimony from her own daughter about the plan to sell property that wasn't hers, a paper trail of misused funds, and now active criminal investigations. The whole story was unraveling. And this time, she was the one watching it from the outside. The woman who once controlled every conversation was now spinning, gasping for a lifeline. But I wasn't the one throwing ropes anymore. I was building walls. Sarah, the daughter, stayed with me full-time. Legally, we had to navigate gray areas. She wasn't my child. But her father was absent, and Julia had essentially abandoned her. We documented everything: statements, texts, the timeline of when she reached out. Social services got involved briefly. When they asked Sarah where she felt safest, she didn't hesitate. "Here," she said. "With me." Her mother tried to call her, too. Left voicemails. Angry, then tearful, then manipulative. "I'm still your mom. I know he's making you say these things. I gave you everything." No, she didn't. She gave Sarah instability, distance, secrets. I gave her the one thing Julia never had: truth, no matter how painful. One night, as I was making dinner, pasta, because it was the only thing I knew she liked no matter what, Sarah said, "Do you still love her?" Caught me off guard. I paused, spoon mid-stir, and thought about it. "No," I said. "Not the person she became." She nodded. Didn't say anything else. But something in her posture relaxed. That night, I checked my phone one last time before bed. Another message from Julia. Just one word. "Why?" I didn't answer. Because by then, I wasn't questioning my decisions anymore. I was living with them, and finally they made sense. Joe, Julia's father, showed up at my office unannounced. He looked embarrassed, worn down. Without sitting, he handed me a thick envelope. Inside were documents showing Julia had taken out a $60,000 loan using his house as collateral. She told him it was for expanding her business. The money was gone. Most of it had been used to buy Mike a car. Joe was livid. "I raised her better than this," he said, voice shaking. I'll testify if I have to. That same week, Sarah filed additional charges: fraud, financial misrepresentation, and attempted property theft. Julia hadn't just broken hearts. She'd broken laws, and now even her own blood wanted no part in defending her. The party video went viral. Millions of views under the caption, "When he walks away without a word." Julia's legal team tried to claim she deserved assets. The judge disagreed. She lost everything: business, money, reputation. Sarah, her daughter, stayed with me full-time. I created a trust fund in her name. I didn't feel angry anymore, just peaceful. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's clarity. I didn't just walk out of a marriage. I walked into something real: freedom, truth, and the future I'd been building alone for far too long.